Dennis could be on his way out of the City ground as a further 2 names are linked with Nottingham Forest. Welcome to your latest transfer news. Good morning, good evening, or good night, wherever in the world you are. Whatever time of day you're watching this, hope you're doing well, and welcome to your latest Forest transfer news. In today's video, we will be talking about the likelihood of Dennis leaving. We've got 2 players in key positions linked to Nottingham Forest, but are they good enough? Well, before we get into all of that, please don't forget, hit that like button if you haven't already. Make sure you're subscribed to Forest Fan TV, as about 35% of you watching this video are currently not. So hit that subscribe button, it's absolutely free to do. And let's get into the news, and let's start with the talks of Dennis. Emmanuel Dennis has been a very, very divisive figure in the club so far this season, coming in the summer transfer window for in and around 20 million from Watford. However, some have stuck by him, some feel he doesn't pass the ball too much, some think he needs an extra run in the team to get a bit of flow and rhythm into his game. But overall, whether you like him, whether you don't, with the amount of game time he's played this season, you can't really class him as a success, although that may be through no fault of his own. But where do you guys stand on Dennis? The talks are that Forest are prepared to currently let him go if the price is right. However, will he go is the question, because again in January, his name was up for the chopping block, and he'd said, and he stated out to Cooper in the club, that he wanted to stay and fight for his place. We actually saw an upsurgence in his form following on from the January window, and he did go on a run of a couple of games where he was playing quite well before he got injured and then subsequently dropped. So Dennis this season, although I think I would love to keep him because I think there's a quality player in there when played in the correct position. Because remember, a lot of the times in the odd occasion he did make a start, he was played out of position and played up front. And for me, he scored one of the goals of the season with that delightful little dink against Newcastle towards the end of the campaign. However, does it make sense that Dennis will be leaving? For me, yes, it does. It is clear he's not in Cooper's first 11, maybe not even first 15 choices at the moment, because even in recent games where he's been named as a substitute, he's very rarely been used, even though he had that little mini hot streak, shall we say, of form. I don't think we'll get the 20 million we spent on him because he hasn't been showcased enough if he was to leave. But I can see a few clubs being interested in him, both in the Premier League, maybe some of the new boys coming up, and also from abroad. There was interest in him in January from some clubs abroad, but I don't think we will recoup that 20 million. I would like him to stay. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below. Let's move on and talk about some incomings into Forest, or should I say some links on incomings into Forest. Batista Mendy is a player that has been linked recently with Nottingham Forest, playing for Angers in France, who currently got relegated this season out of the top flight of the French division football. And he is a CDM who comes at a very cheap price, anywhere in around about 3 to 4 million pounds. He signed for Angers about 2 years ago, on a 3-year contract, and is an out-and-out CDM, a player who likes to hold his position in and around, the middle third of the pitch. Not very progressive in terms of his attacking play, but does like to drop in between the centre-backs to add that extra cover. In fact, he has even played as a centre-back before. Has he lit the world on fire? Well, he's been good at his current club, but as I mentioned, they have been relegated. And is he the right fit for Forest? Because we have been told that there are going to be some box office / marquee signings coming to Forest this season, or at the very least, that will be the intent. But the young Mendy is not one of those, but he could be one that comes in and develops quite well. He's not the fastest. He's a little leggy in terms of he's got quite long legs, gets into those tackles, and can play a decent pass every now and again, but he is far from the finished article. But for £3 to £4 million, it is not a risky punt at all. He's still young, he can still develop. And the only problem I have with it is he's French, and we all know how French players fared at Forest last season. But I would actually take a punt at him, if not to have him as a backup. Look, there are many CDMs that I have on my shopping list, and Mendy wasn't even on the list. But for the price, I still think this could be quite a steal. And I would take the risk, but I wouldn't be looking to start him in the 11. It's another squad player for me. And at the moment, we seem to be more linked with squad players than we are for players who could challenge for the first 11 shirts. But you do have to bolster out the squad, and there does need to be players leaving. I know we've just talked about Dennis, and in previous videos, we've talked about a few of the players that have got released. It's going to be a busy summer window at Nottingham Forest, I think, for outgoings and for incomings as well. So stay tuned and we'll see how it develops. But there is a player that we'll touch on in a second now, who has previously been linked to Forest for a couple of mil, and now his price is worth tenfold. So let's jump into that. Silas Wamangituka. Yes, a mouthful there, has been linked to Nottingham Forest. He's a player that was linked to Forest under the Karanka era back in, I can't remember, 2019 or whenever it was. And he's a player that has developed a lot since then. A player that was worth a couple of million when he was playing at Paris FC, and now in Stuttgart is quoted at being worth in and around 20 million. Who is this player, some of you may be asking? He is one of the most skillful players in the Bundesliga. Yes, he's raw. Yes, he still needs to polish up a little. But with a name like that, where he used to be called Waman, didn't like that and asked to be addressed by his first name, Silas. So we'll carry on calling him Silas as he's requested. He is a very, very skillful player. He plays up front, for those of you who don't know much about him. Skillful on the ball, very agile on the ball, and did have an eye for goal. However, he has dried up quite heavily. But is it because Stuttgart haven't had the greatest of seasons this year? Who knows? But 20 million is the price tag now being put around his neck, and Forest are interested in him. It's a player that they have been scouting even before the Karanka era, and having a look at him and watching his development, and he clearly is going in the right direction. And of course, not forgetting that Mangala came from the same club, so there is a connection there already with the current Forest player. An agent Mangala could be called upon, and his service is required to get this one through the door. Would this be a player I go for? He's one of these players that is really fun to watch on the pitch. He will, do the most dazzling things, will frustrate you as well. But is he again what we need in our second season in the Premier League? He could have the X factor. I do rate him. Not highly enough to put on my shopping list, but he is one that I wouldn't say no to at the City Ground. But I just feel at the moment all these links are a bit scattergun in terms of the approach, in terms of the caliber of players we should be going for. I still do think we need to clear out a decent amount and then look to bring maybe 5, max 6 players in, but 6 pedigree players who will challenge for those first 11 shirts on the pitch and really push up the standards of all the other players in and around there, making them all worried, no matter how good or bad they have been last season, about their current position in the team. Because competition for places is the most important thing to have in a squad. It reduces the lack of, players just switching off, not playing well, knowing that there's someone there ready to take their shirt if they're not performing. And just adding squad players is good if you get injuries like we have had this season. But in terms of progressing the squad, it's something that I would like to see done and done quicker. So with Silas, would I take him? Yes, I would. Do I see him as a starter? Fringe would be the word I would use on him. But I do want to start seeing these marquee names being linked to Forest, players that will drive us forward. I will put my shopping list together shortly. It's a fun, exciting looking list. But at the moment, these are the types of players that are being linked with Forest. Obviously, the Hendo deal is still progressing, and that will be done soon as Dean subscribes. Thank you very much, Dean. But it still relies a lot on what De Gea is going to do. We'll have a whole video on that coming out shortly as that progresses. But let me know what you think of Silas even, and Mendy in the comments down below. And the real important question I want to ask you guys is, would you let Dennis go? Have you been convinced that there is enough of a player in him? Remembering what he did at Watford in the Premier League, in one of the worst teams the Premier League has seen since maybe the Derby days. Let me know down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, before you leave, please don't forget to hit that like button. Subscribe to FFTV if you are new. And we'll see you on the next video. And come on, you Reds.